What do a 2,000-year-old man and Springtime for Hitler have in common? Welcome to the world of Mel Brooks.
Hey, I'm Garrett, feeling pretty chill today and ready to dive into a comedy legend.
And I'm Leah, excited to explore this iconic figure in entertainment history. Welcome to Laid Back Learning with Leah and Garrett.
Topic on the table today, Mel Brooks, the comedy maestro. Okay, so quick story. When I was a kid, I watched Spaceballs, thinking it was just another serious sci-fi epic. I'm sitting there like, this Darth-ish guy is named Dark Helmet, and these ships look kind of, ridiculous. But I bought it for a good 10 minutes. Then the radar got jammed with actual jam, and my brain just short-circuited. That's when I realized parody can be its own kind of world building. I was totally misled and totally delighted.
Let's set the scene. Mel Brooks, born Melvin James Kaminsky in Brooklyn in 1926, is an American filmmaker, comedian, writer, and actor whose specialty is parody, a playful send-up that imitates a style or genre to make jokes. He took that across film, television, stage, albums, even books. If you know the producers Blazing Saddles or Young Frankenstein, you've already met his greatest hits.
And he's one of the rare folks to hit an EGOT, which just means he won an Emmy, a Grammy, an Oscar, and a Tony. That spread tells you a lot. He didn't just make movies, he wrote for TV, did albums like The 2,000-Year-Old Man, and composed for Broadway. Style-wise, it's rapid-fire jokes, musical numbers, and affectionate pastiche. Basically, a loving imitation of a style. He'll spoof genres, but you can feel the respect under the punchlines.
He also loves breaking the fourth wall, which is when a story acknowledges the audience or the fact that it's a story. He'll have characters comment on the movie they're in or burst into a showstopper in the middle of a Western. It's wild and joyful, like he's inviting everyone into the sandbox he's playing in. Early days. He was literally born on a tenement kitchen table in Brooklyn. His parents were Jewish immigrants with roots in what's now Gdańsk and Kiev. His father died when Mel was 2, and he was a small, sickly kid who got bullied. He said he learned to deflect pain and anger with humor. As a teen, he changed his last name from Kaminsky to Brooks, taken from his mother's maiden name Brookman, to avoid confusion with a famous trumpeter. Then there's the Borscht Belt, which were Catskills resorts that trained a lot of Jewish comedians. He worked there as a tumbler, basically a high-energy host who keeps guests laughing. He once did a pool bit with an overcoat and suitcases of rocks. Business was terrible. That's commitment.
World War II shaped him too. He trained as a radio operator, then served in Europe with the 1104th Engineer Combat Battalion during the Battle of the Bulge period. Combat engineers build bridges and clear hazards. He located mines while others defused them, and his unit built Bailey bridges, which are portable prefab bridges you can assemble fast to move troops and tanks. He even responded to German songs over loudspeakers by singing Al Jolson into a bullhorn. It's darkly funny and honestly kind of defiant. Later he moved into Special Services, the Army's entertainment wing, doing comedy for the troops. You can feel how that experience fed his instinct to laugh at fear and power.
After the war, he went back to the Catskills, then found his way to television writing. Sid Caesar, a titan of 1950s sketch comedy, hired him. In that room were heavy hitters like Carl Reiner, who later created The Dick Van Dyke Show and directed big comedies, Neil Simon, the playwright, and Mel Tolkien, a head writer who mentored Brooks and even got him into reading deeper stuff like Gogol's Dead Souls. Those years were brilliant but brutal. He's talked about the stress being so intense that he spiraled at times, but out of that came the 2,000-year-old man with Reiner. That's where Reiner plays the interviewer, and Brooks is this cranky immortal. They did it on The Steve Allen Show and sold 1 million records in 1961. It wasn't just a skit. It became a lifeline between gigs and a blueprint for his improvisational brain.
He also co-created Get Smart in 1965 with Buck Henry, who was a sharp screenwriter and actor. It turned spy thrillers into absurdity, with Don Adams as the bumbling Agent 86. Awards rolled in, and around that time Brooks made The Critic, an animated short he narrated, which won him an Oscar. Then came The Producers in 1968. Peter Sellers, the British comedy star from The Pink Panther, literally bought ads to support it when people were nervous about the premise. And the premise was bold. Springtime for Hitler is a musical number inside the movie, satirizing fascism by making it ridiculous. He always argued that mockery strips tyrants of mystique. He won the Oscar for Best Original Screenplay, which helped the movie find its audience.
There was a stumble with The 12 Chairs in 1970, a literary adaptation that didn't land. But then the explosion. Blazing Saddles in 1974. It's a Western send-up he worked on after being pulled in as a script doctor by agent David Begelman. The writing team included folks like Andrew Bergman and Norman Steinberg, and the movie just, detonated the box office. He's called it a Jewish Western with a black hero, which gets at the heart. It's outrageous while still holding compassion for its protagonist. It won a Writers Guild Award and later went to the National Film Registry, which is the Library of Congress list of films considered culturally or historically significant. Same year, Young Frankenstein. Gene Wilder, the actor with those soulful eyes and perfect timing, co-wrote it with Brooks. It's in black and white, uses vintage-style lab gear, and honestly, it plays like a love letter to old Universal monster movies.
Then he starts playing with form. Silent Movie in 1976 is almost entirely silent, except for one perfect gag where the only spoken word is from Marcel Marceau, the world-famous mime, who says non. That's chef's kiss humor. High Anxiety in 1977 riffs on Alfred Hitchcock, the master of suspense, with Brooks starring in a Freudian thriller parody. And as his name became synonymous with broad comedy, he launched Brooks Films in 1980, a production company he used to make serious dramas without confusing people expecting pratfalls. Under that banner, he produced The Elephant Man, directed by David Lynch, who's known for dreamlike, unsettling films. Later came Francis, a biographical drama, and The Fly in 1986, a landmark body horror film by David Cronenberg. That brand firewall was savvy.
Speaking of performances, he kept swinging as a performer and writer too. History of the World, Part 1 in 1981 is sketch comedy across eras, narrated by Orson Welles, the legendary voice behind Citizen Kane. In 1983, he and Anne Bancroft, his wife and a brilliant actress, starred together in To Be or Not to Be, which included the Hitler rap on the soundtrack, again using satire to demystify fascism. 84 Charing Cross Road in 1987, produced under Brooks Films, was a gentle literary romance starring Bancroft and Anthony Hopkins. And of course Spaceballs in 1987, which turned sci-fi tropes and merchandising into gleeful targets. It later spawned Spaceballs, the animated series, keeping those gags alive.
The 1990s were a mix. Life Stinks tried a non-parody route and didn't connect. Robin Hood, Men in Tights in 1993 brought back his Robin Hood jokes from a short-lived 1975 TV series. Dracula, Dead and Loving It in 1995 went full gothic spoof. Then came the Broadway era. The Producers musical, from 2001 to 2007, was a juggernaut starring Nathan Lane and Matthew Broderick, both powerhouse stage actors. It won 12 Tony Awards, which are basically Broadway's top honors. Brooks wrote the score and book, pulling off a sweep that almost never happens. He later adapted Young Frankenstein for the stage in 2007. Even when reviews were mixed, the craft sparkled. He also kept popping up in voice roles, like Big Weld in Robots, a quick cameo as Einstein in Mr. Peabody and Sherman, and Vlad in the Hotel Transylvania sequels. Meanwhile, the American Film Institute ranked 3 of his films among the best comedies of the 20th century, which cements his legacy.
Late career glow. He got the AFI Life Achievement Award, a Kennedy Center honor, the National Medal of Arts, and a BAFTA Fellowship from the British Academy. In 2024, he received an Honorary Academy Award, which is a big lifetime salute. He published a memoir in 2021, All About Me, still writing in his mid-90s. Then he wrote and produced History of the World Part 2 in 2023 for streaming, even grabbing an Emmy nomination for his narration. And he's not done. In 2025, announcements dropped for Spaceballs, the new one, and a TV project called Very Young Frankenstein. A 2026 HBO documentary, Mel Brooks, the 99-year-old man, pulls it all together. It's kind of amazing. Still creating, still reinventing.
All right, let's roll on to a twisty one. There's a disputed detail about his World War II timeline. A Department of Defense reporter wrote that he arrived in France in November 1944, but Brooks later said he boarded a troop ship around mid-February 1945 at the Brooklyn Navy Yard. Why does that matter? I think dates anchor which battles and conditions he faced, which can shape how we read the edge in his comedy. Winter 44 in Europe was brutal. If he was there then, it colors the mine work and the Battle of the Bulge context. And I lean on records where we have them while taking his voice seriously too.
I get that. Real talk, I'm a stickler for accuracy too, but I also think personal recollection has its own authority. Memory can blur exact dates, especially under stress, and still capture the truth of experience. Whether it was late 1944 or early 1945, he was a young man in a war zone doing dangerous engineer work. The core truth is that he saw enough to come back believing, as he put it, that death is the real enemy. That comes through when he uses laughter to take the oxygen away from bullies and tyrants. In a way, the emotional timestamp matters more than the calendar date.
That's a solid point. Let me puzzle that one out. If we treat the two timelines as overlapping possibilities in the same final push into Germany, then what we know stands. He was in combat engineering, he did mine location, his unit built those Bailey bridges over the Roer and later the Rhine, and he closed with reconnaissance in the Harz Mountains as the war ended. By the way, Bailey Bridge just means a modular steel truss you can bolt together fast in the field. It's like Lego for the military, only it carries tanks.
Why do you think the war piece shows up in his comedy not as trauma stories but as show tunes like Springtime for Hitler being a big razzle-dazzle number?
Because spectacle flips the power dynamic. If you turn a tyrant into a chorus line gag, you rob them of fear. It's psychological judo, and it's consistent with how he handled bullying as a kid. He clothed anger in jokes to survive. So even if we never pinpoint the exact embarkation day, the function of those experiences is clear. They feed a comedy that punctures pomposity and says, you don't get to scare us anymore.
Okay, let's move on to the pop culture splash. The Producers is a perfect example of a project living many lives. First, a 1968 film that was controversial and then cult beloved, then the 2001 Broadway musical that broke the Tony record with 12 wins. That's an arc. Same DNA, different eras receiving it with different levels of comfort, and he navigated both as the writer of the film and composer-lyricist on the stage version.
And Spaceballs is a cult classic that keeps getting rediscovered. It parodies sci-fi and merchandising, but it also just plays like a comedy hangout. If the jokes land, the shelf life gets long. The fact that a new sequel is announced decades later says the universe still has legs. Or maybe jets, with plaid speed.
Counterfactual time. What if major studios had fully embraced the Producers in 1968? Would the shock have dulled, and would it have lost that outsider energy that helped it become a legend later?
I think if it launched as a mainstream darling in 1968, the runway to Broadway might have looked different. No need for Peter Sellers to buy those big ads, no slow burn. But maybe that slow burn was the marinade the story needed. The taboo had to soften over decades so audiences could embrace a full-tilt musical about tastelessness. If the movie had been instantly safe, the later stage version might not have felt like a joyous reclaiming. It might have just felt like, yeah, that old hit.
I hear that, though part of me wonders if early mainstream love could have supercharged his stage career sooner. Imagine a 1970s Brooks musical boom. But I agree the distance did something special. It let him come back with not just a revival, but a reinvention, armed with all the Broadway craft he'd built up. Timing is an artist, too. So there's your big picture. From a kitchen table in Brooklyn to a shelf full of major honors, and somehow he's still making new work. That's a story worth telling.
All right, that ties it up nicely. I'm down for revisiting the Producers and then queuing up Young Frankenstein and Spaceballs. Stay curious.